I've always liked card games, but not in a competitive sense. Rather than research the best possible cards and decks, I've always been partial to the collection process and figuring out synergies on my own with the cards I have. I think that's why deck building games are so fun to me. It's collecting cards and building decks without the huge overhead cost of buying booster packs. Power Chord stuck out as interesting to me because it appeared to fuse several things I enjoy: turn-based party combat, deck building, and a grungy, heavy metal aesthetic. In the world of Power Chord, demons have returned to the Midverse, a hard rock-themed world filled with musicians that are equally skilled in combat as their instruments. The demon warlords are invading in an attempt to steal the most powerful relic in the Midverse, the Chronocaster, a reality-bending guitar that was previously used to trap the demons in their realm, known as Helmuth. In order to reach the Chronocaster first, you have to get your band together, fight your way to Tower Sonorek, and seal the portal to Helmuth to save the Midverse. Gameplay is very typical of a roguelike deck builder. You must traverse 3 different sections of different nodes, each with a boss at the end. Node types consist of normal combat, gear chests, elite combat, shops, events, and healing. Clearing normal combat nodes gives rewards such as adding a card to your deck and gold, while elite combat nodes can reward you with more gear to equip to your bandmates. Each band member can equip up to 4 pieces of gear, and gear has beneficial effects that will apply to the equipped bandmate and sometimes the entire band. Events can have various rewards and will occasionally be quests that can be completed on future, marked event nodes for an even greater reward. Combat in Power Chord is structured around your bandmates. Your band must have a drummer, bassist, guitarist, and vocalist, each differentiated by the colors blue, purple, red, and yellow respectively. The easiest way to think of these band positions is to pair them with typical party roles. Drummers are tanks, guitarists are main damage, bassists are secondary damage with status effects, and vocalists are casters. There are 3 characters in each role that all offer a unique playstyle through their specific starting cards and gear. Each character also has a starting health and armor value. In Power Chord, armor does not expire between turns and can be thought of as health that regenerates at the end of every combat. Armor is reduced by most damage types and acts as a buffer before suffering health damage. Enemies you face can also have armor, but there is an additional property that only affects enemy characters. When breaking an enemy's armor, that enemy is stunned and will skip their next turn. This mechanic, coupled with the fact that enemies attacked from left to right, provides a tactical element to each turn, where it's important to weigh the option of stunning enemies to prevent attacks rather than finish them off one by one. At the start of each turn, you gain 4 energy and draw 5 cards from your deck. Your deck is made up of cards that belong to each of your bandmates and have the same color background as their specified role. Cards are mostly divided into attack and support types. Attacks deal damage, and most support cards provide either a buff to your allies or a debuff to enemies. Some support cards will put a character into a stance, a state with a perpetual positive effect that lasts until that character takes health damage. Stances are visualized by the character raising a fist into the air and gaining a matching color aura behind the character. Enemies can also enter stances and similarly must be dealt health damage to end the effect. Because the game is party-based, you can continue your run if a party member falls in combat, but any cards belonging to that character are now unusable and will be drawn as an unplayable curse card. Characters can be revived at healing stations, so all is not lost if someone does fall. Besides managing energy and cards, there is also a major focus on what are called charges. Charges are stacks of buffs or debuffs that can be applied to any character and can dramatically change combat effectiveness. The tutorial teaches the player that charges decrease by 1 each turn, but in practice, different charges have different properties that aren't always communicated to the player. For example, rage and barrier charges are not reduced by 1 each turn, and weakness charges can be removed by dealing damage to enemies. Additional cards are unlocked by completing challenges that are tracked in the main menu. As you complete challenges during a playthrough, you will also be shown the unlocked cards that are now made available. I thought this was an interesting means of unlocking cards, especially because the cards are technically made available as soon as combat ends, although you still need to find them in shops or as combat rewards. As more cards become available to you, your potential for more powerful decks increases and makes future runs easier. But as I played more of Power Chord and unlocked more cards, I also noticed some issues with the overall game experience. There's an interesting difficulty curve that I noticed as I spent more time playing the game. In the early stages of Power Chord, I felt like the cards available to me were just not good enough to get through the entire game. Often they were very simple, deal damage or apply effect cards that had no additional mechanics to strategize around. As you get deeper into a run, enemies get stronger and combat would often get longer and more difficult until I hit a point of just getting decimated. While I know it's certainly possible that I just made poor decisions in picking and playing cards, it was the first time in a roguelike where I felt like I did not have the ability to succeed. I did eventually unlock more cards and I was able to beat the game several times, so I did chalk up the initial feelings to growing pains of becoming acquainted with the game. However, having more unlocked cards quickly highlighted another issue. I noticed that there was not a feeling of satisfaction around crafting your deck. While there were certainly strong cards I unlocked, they were often so strong that choosing other cards would actually make my deck worse. There are technically combos to find, but they often did not span across multiple bandmates, and were usually relegated to only 2 or 3 cards working together each run. This resulted in what felt like shallow synergies, and frequently created situations where either a single character carries your whole band, or your deck is filled with a random assortment of cards across bandmates that do not synergize. I also felt that this problem extends to many of the gear items as well. Most gear has a risk-reward factor to take into account, but in my opinion there were many times the risk was not worth the reward. Just like with cards, the weak gear was negligible and the best gear would be obviously powerful with no risk. Both of these factors resulted in passing on lots of rewards and not spending money in shops because there wasn't anything offered worth adding to your arsenal. This was very disappointing because Power Chord is marketed as a deck builder, but the card balance and deck building experience was the least interesting element of the game. Overall, I did enjoy the time I spent with Power Chord, although I was hoping for a bit more longevity. While the presentation is very impressive, Power Chord is a game with many interesting concepts that, in my opinion, don't extend far beyond the surface level. It's certainly fun for a little while and replayable with its multiple characters, but the deck building experience should never be the weakest aspect of a deck building game. Thanks for watching, take care, and remember, keep having fun.